Hi everyone, and welcome back to Vasant Cloud Talk. So today we're going to see, or we're going to start from the very beginning, the absolute first. And this is the thing that you should set up in any AWS account. And honestly, it's the one thing that if you get wrong, then nothing else matters. So what we're talking about is the IAM, Identity and Access Management. And here's the good news: IAM is completely free, so it always has been and always will be. So there's a zero reason not to learn this properly. So let's quickly jump in. So moving on to the second slide. What exactly is IAM? So in simple terms, IAM, the acronym is Identity and Access Management. So IAM answers two questions every time you do anything in AWS. So who are you? And that is the authentication. And what are you allowed to do? That's the authorization. And I mean everything, every every single thing. So every API call, every click in the console, every CLI command, all of it goes through IAM, and there are no shortcuts, no backdoors. And now here's how I like to think about it. So imagine your AWS account is a building, like an office building, and IAM, the Identity and Access Management, is the entire security system. The front desk, the ID badges, the key cards for every door, and the cameras watching everything. So all in one. A few things to know right away is IAM is global. It's not tied to any region. So when you create a user that works that user works everywhere. So it's free. There are no charges for IAM. It's not ever. And next comes the first priority. And it's the first thing you should configure in any new AWS account. So before you launch a server, before you create a bucket, you secure the IAM first. And now the third slide, the users. So let's break IAM down into four main building blocks. And the first one is the users. And IAM or an IAM user represents a single person or sometimes a single application that interacts with the AWS. So think of it like an employee badge. It has your name on it, it identifies you, and it's your badge. So nobody else should be using it. Now, a user can have two types of access, right? The first thing is the console access. That's the username and password to log into the AWS website and what you would use as a human sitting at a computer. And the next thing is the programmatic access. So that's a access key ID and a secret access key. So this is what the CLI and the SDKs use. So think of it as a machine readable password. Now, here's something that catches a lot of people off guard. So when you create a brand new user, they can do absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yes. So zero permissions. They can log in. Yes, they can log in for sure, but they can't see anything and they can't create anything. They can't touch anything. It's a blank slate. You have to explicitly give them access, and that's actually a really good thing because it's secure by default. And the next thing is the groups, the IAM groups. A group is just a collection of users who need the same permission. That's it. So think of it like a department in a company. So everyone in engineering gets access to the code repo, and everyone in finance get access to the billing dashboards. So you don't need to configure each person one by one. All you do is you put them in a group, and the group gets the permissions. Just that. So for example, in a demo later, we'll set up three groups: the admins, the developers, and the auditors. So admin is full access for everything. And in our case, it's Alice, our CEO. And next comes the developers who get access to EC2, S3, Lambda, CloudWatch. So this is Bob. And we got auditors who gets only the read-only access across the board. And that is, in our case, it's Dave. Now, two things to remember about groups. One, the groups can only contain users. You cannot put a group inside another group. There's going to be no nesting. AWS keeps it very flat. The second thing is, and this is a best practice, so always assign permissions to groups, not individual users. Okay. When someone leaves a company and another person joins the company, just move the new person into the developer group. The new person will get the same access instantly. So you don't need to rebuild the permissions from scratch, right? So it's very easy to manage. And the next thing is the roles. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. The roles, yes. A role is a kind of like a hat that you can put on. So, what you wear, the hat, right? So, you get certain powers. When you take it off, those powers go away. So, more specifically, a role is an identity with permissions. But unlike a user, it does not have a permanent password or a permanent key. So instead, what happens is whoever assumes the role gets temporary credentials that will expire automatically. So usually in 1 to 12 hours. So my favorite way to explain it is imagine you visit a company, you're not an employee, but at the front desk, they hand you a visitor badge, right? That badge lets you into your conference room on the third floor, but that's it. You can't go to the server room. And when your meeting is over, the badge will stop working. And that's a role, right? And now let me show you why roles matter so much. And let's say you have an EC2 instance, a server in the cloud, and it needs to read files from S3. Without roles, you would have to hard code your AWS access keys into the application code. And if those keys leak, maybe someone pushes them to GitHub by accident, your entire account is compromised. With roles, the EC2 instance assumes a role. So it gets temporary credentials that rotate automatically. So no keys in the code, no keys to leak. It just works. That's it. And this is the golden rule. Whenever you can use a role instead of access keys, use the role every single time. The next slide, where we discuss about the policies, the fourth and the final pillar, the policies. So these policies are where you actually write the rules, and they are written in JSON. It's a structured format, and once you see a few, you'll be reading them in your sleep. So talking about this, so a policy is basically a document that says allow or deny this action on this resource, and think of it as just a fine print on the back of your ID badge, right? It says you can enter floor 1 through 3, but not the server room. So let me walk you through the structure. The effect, right? So this is either allow or deny. That's it. Two options: allow or deny. And next comes the action. What API call are you making? Something like the S3 get object to download a file or EC2 instances to launch a server, right? And next comes the resource. Which specific thing does this apply to? So you use an AR in here, which will cover those in a minute. And next, the policy. So that's the policy. It has the effect, action, resource. So once you internalize that, you can read any IAM policy in AWS, right? And moving on to the next one, the policy types. So there are three types of policies, and this comes up in interviews all the time. The first thing is the AWS managed policy. So these are pre-built by AWS. Things like Amazon S3 read-only access or administrator access. So they cover common use cases. They are maintained by AWS and they work across all the accounts. So use these first, and they cover about 80% of what you will need. And next comes the customer managed policies. So these are the ones that you write yourself. They are reusable within your account and you have full control. Use these when you need something like custom, like allow access to only this one specific S3 bucket. And next comes the inline policy. So these are embedded directly into a single user group or a role. They are not reusable, and they get deleted when the entity is deleted, right? So since it's inline, so generally you can avoid inline policies because they're hard to track and hard to manage at scale. So the hierarchy, I'll tell you, is try the AWS managed first and then the customer managed, and inline, that's only a last resort. And next comes the policy evaluation. So this next part is the very critical one. So this is how AWS actually decides whether to allow or deny your request, and this will come up in the interview. So here is the flow. Please follow along. So step one, everything starts as denied. By default, you can't do anything. Default deny. In the step two, AWS gathers all the policies that apply to you, your user policies, your group policies, any role policies, resource based policies, everything, every single thing. The third one, it checks, is there any explicit deny anywhere? If yes, you're done. Denied. An explicit deny always wins, always, no exceptions, no override. And then step four, okay, no deny found. Is there any explicit allow? If yes, it will be allowed. You are now in. And in the step five, no allow found either. Then you are back to the default denied. So that's the flow that it works. So here's the golden rule. I want you to remember: the explicit deny beats the allow. which beats the default deny, or even shorter, deny always wins. And next comes the root user. So let's talk about the root user now. And I want you to pay close attention because this is a security critical topic. So the root user is the email address and password you used when you first created your AWS account. And this user has unrestricted, unlimited access to absolutely everything in your account, every service, every resource, every setting. So think of it as the master key to your entire building. So it opens every door, every safe, every lock, and that's exactly why you don't carry it around. So you lock it in a vault and only take it when absolutely necessary. And here's what you should do it with the root. So you have to enable the MFA immediately, right? So the moment you create your account, multi-factor authentication, this is non-negotiable. Create a separate admin IAM user and use that for your daily work. And here's what you should never do. Never create keys for root. There is no reason to create. And never use root for everyday task. There is no reason for that either. And never share root credentials with anyone, not your teammate, not your boss, not anyone. And there are a few things that only the root user can do, like closing the account, changing the support plan, or enabling MFA delete on S3 buckets. That's why you pull out the master key. The rest of the time, it stays locked away. And next is the ARN, the Amazon resource name. Very quick one before we wrap up. So the Amazon resource name. So every single resource in AWS, every bucket, every server, every user, every policy has a unique identifier, and that's what we call it as ARN. So the format is very simple. It comes as ARN, the Amazon resource name, and followed by AWS, followed by the service, and then the region, the account, the ID resource. So that's the ARN for you. So an S3 bucket might be ARN AWS S3 and my bucket. So notice there is no region there because S3 bucket names are global. And next comes the EC2 instance. So EC2 instance might be ARN AWS EC2 and then the region, the US East, and then the number followed by the instance ID. So an IAM user is ARN AWS IAM, the number, the ID. Again, there is no region because IAM is global. So you'll be typing ARN into every policy you write. So get it comfortable with this format and it comes up constantly in the interviews too. So finally, a quick summary on what we have covered so far. So users are the person or app with a permanent credential. Group is a collection of users with shared permissions. Roles are temporary identities that can be assumed or demand. Policies, they are the JSON documents that define what's allowed and what's not. And the principle to always keep in mind, least privilege, only give the access that's needed, nothing extra. Deny always wins. Explicit deny overrides everything. Lockdown root, MFA on, access keys off, daily use never. And the rollover keys, temporary beats permanent every time. Finally, what's next? So that's it. The theory is done. So now in the next video, it's actually the building time. So the next part, we're going to open up an AWS console and the CLI, and we're going to create a complete multi-user environment from scratch. An admin, a developer, a read-only auditor with proper groups, proper policies, MFA enforcement, and an EC2 rule. The works. So and after that, we have got 15 interview questions from beginner level and what is IAM all the way up to scenario based ones like a developer has S3 full access but can't delete from a specific bucket. What's going on? So if you're finding this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the hands-on part and I'll see you in the next one. Let's go build it. Until I see you all in the next video, it's bye bye from Vasant Shanmugam and your favorite Vasant Cloud Talk. Take care and bye bye.